Hello, I'm Chris Simmons, and welcome back to The Size of Our Shoes. This program is dedicated to action, awareness, and advocacy regarding climate change. On today's episode, let's talk ice, why we need it, and why we're losing it. The Arctic Ocean and Antarctica. They help regulate the world's temperature and the tides. But as industries continue unsustainable energy and agriculture practices, these areas face annihilation. This spells disaster for coastal cities and pose life-altering consequences for global citizens and governments the world over. Let's start with the South Pole. Antarctica is a continent covered and surrounded by ice. Sea ice comes and goes with the seasons, but the land ice covering the continent has been a fixture of the terrain for a millennia. Because of this, when it melts, it adds new water to the surrounding oceans, which contributes to sea level rise. 2.7 trillion tons of land ice was lost between 1992 and 2017, which has contributed to no less than a centimeter of ocean rise. The scary part? Over half of those losses have occurred since 2013 alone. The NRDC notes that of the 8 inches of sea level rise that have occurred since the year 1900, 3 of them have occurred since 1993. Traveling north, we find the second largest source of land ice in the world, Greenland. Using gravity satellites like GRACE, NASA has calculated that Greenland loses 279 gigatons of land ice per year. Yes, you heard me correctly, gravity satellites. As in, these collections of ice are so massive, they actually have a gravitational pull. Enough so to even affect the tides. Thwaites and Pine Island, for example, are massive glaciers in Antarctica. They keep water farther south that would otherwise be sloshing around the east coast of North America. Negative feedback loops begin to occur as a result of this lost ice. For example, the release of methane from melting land ice, which furthers the greenhouse effect. Also, less reflective surface. Fresh snow on a sheet of ice can reflect nearly 100% of the sun's rays back into space. Less ice means less reflection of the heat, which is why the Arctic is actually warming 5 times faster than the rest of the world. Coastal cities and islands feel the brunt of this effect in the form of storm surges and flooding. 9 million Americans actually live in flood-susceptible areas, and that number is meant to rise by 45% by the end of this century. And, of course, with increased flooding comes the question of migration. In Newtok, Alaska, plans have been in motion since the 90s to relocate because of imminent threat of destruction by flood. This problem goes farther than coastal cities. It affects our governments, our ecosystems, and our tax dollars. Join me on the next episode of The Size of Our Shoes, where I'll be discussing some of the action already being taken for these areas, and some of the action that can and should be taken for, let's face it, the longevity of the human race. Hey everyone. That was a bit of a heavy episode. I know. I try and keep it light on this channel to remind everyone that we still do have hope. We still do have a fighting chance. But sometimes to understand the real weight of a situation, we need to burrow down to the heart of it. Please comment with one thing that you learned that might have surprised you. And as always, like, subscribe, and share so that you can be reminded about next week's episode, which is the conclusion to this week's episode. Until then, be well.